Good morning everybody, this is episode 3 of Never Just a Roof. I'm Steve Wells from JJ Roofing Supplies and we're at our training academy today in Cricklewood. We've got a fantastic edition of Never Just a Roof today and we've got Tyrone Elkins with us from Restec. He's their trainer and one of their top guys. I've worked with Tyrone now for about 4 years since I came back to JJ's 5 years ago, and he's been an absolute diamond in helping us promote all our new systems, GRP and FlexiTech, and cover it, which has been absolutely fantastic. What is Never Just a Roof? Obviously we do it every month and we try and get the movers and the shakers of the roofing industry on, interesting people for you guys. It's not about whether they're interesting to us, it's about whether what we're showing is of interest to you. So please make sure you like the hashtag Never Just a Roof. You can follow it so you'll get notified of the next course or the next session. Rather, it's not a course, is it? It's the next session, which will be next month, which is fantastic. Don't forget to like it, don't forget to follow it, and you'll be notified. Morning.
Morning, Steve. Thank you very much for having me.
No, that's right, that's great. Just tell us a little bit about what you do for Restec.
So I'm actually a sales manager for Restec. So I look after our merchant base, such as JJ Roofing, look after them. That can vary from doing the training sessions, dealing with customer inquiries, product related issues and things like that. If there's any inquiries through the product, supporting you guys, the staff, pushing the products in store, and also obviously helping out with the contractors as well.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Now, he undersells himself a little bit now. He really does, because you'll see all the fantastic posts that Restec do on the different social media channels. He's one of the main guys behind that, and his training and his technical knowledge and assistance to us as a company and to trade in general has been fantastic. So I'd like to say at the beginning, thanks for all your help over the last 3 or 4 years. It's been absolutely fantastic, and it's helped us come on leaps and bounds with these products. Now we've got a few things that we're going to talk about today. I am a bit nervous. I know it doesn't show, but we've got some actual live demos. Normally we have our guest in a remote location, but today we thought we'd try and do it a little bit different. Only time will tell whether it was the right decision or not to do it in the same location so that we could do different aspects of the GRP installation. Yeah. So if we just move around to the back and we can just cover what we're going to look at today. Yep. So we're gonna look at boarding. We're going to look at overlays. We're going to look at traditional GRP systems. We're going to look at a bit of detailing. And you know, if you've got some questions, put them in the comments. Nick will pick up on them, our marketing manager who's behind the camera today, and we'll try and answer your questions. We've got some giveaways at the end, so please enjoy today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is overlays. Before we go into boarding, let's just talk about overlays, Ty. Let's just talk about the rise of the overlay GRP system.
Yeah, so it for me, it certainly feels like it's been around for a long time, but it is quite new to the merchant market, I guess.
Yeah.
Although it's been heavily used in specification works for probably 30 plus years now, it's only recently kind of come into the merchant market, so it's a bit more regularly available, much like traditional GRP is. Where it stands out a little bit is that it's a bit more versatile. Yep. So you're not just restricted to using it onto new board applications, you can overlay existing substrates. And that's where you typically save a lot of time and money, one through the install, and obviously you're negating the need for boarding, so it's less cost of material. We know how expensive the boards are at the moment as well, fixings and things like that.
Is it a miracle cure? It's not a miracle cure though, is it?
It's not, so it's certainly something that I promote now. Just because it can go over an existing surface doesn't necessarily mean that it always should go over an existing surface. We have to accept the fact that there will be the occasion that you will have to remove back to bare joists and relay new boards and start fresh. And then that's typically where your traditional GRPs would pick up, because they are more cost effective in that manner.
Yeah. The overlay rates are a little bit heavier on the use of the resin, are they?
Yeah, so the material cost typically costs a little bit more when you're versing it against traditional GRP systems. But again, usually that's off-ended without the strip off and the labour costs and things like that. But on a new build application, traditional GRPs do work out to be more cost effective than an overlay system.
Yeah, I must admit it's been a really good addition to the merchant market, especially for guys like us.
Yeah.
Where it's opened up a door that was probably closed before, that door is now open. But obviously the contractor has to take responsibility to make sure, like all overlays, whether it be felt or GRP, that the substrate is sound and in good enough condition to take it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, we give as much information as we can to yourself selling the products, and obviously to the contractors. That's why we obviously heavily promote the training as well, so we can go through all the details before they actually start to use it. And as you rightfully said a moment ago, it's not a miracle cure. If there's issues, underlying issues with the roof, putting a new skin of laminate over the top of it, it's not going to resolve all those issues. So we rely heavily on the contractor doing their due diligence and getting up on the roof and checking through, making sure you can do adhesion tests, core samples and things like that as well.
All the things that you would do with any other roofing product, really. So the rules are still the same. The state of deck is paramount, and preparation, which is what we now move on to, is key. With all roofing, preparation is key, and it's no different with GRP tie, is it? Obviously, people would be recommended to use TNG OSB always.
Yeah, so where the benefits lie then using tongue and groove board over 8x4 straight edge boards, I know that's sometimes preference to installers. The tongue and groove board's a load bearing structural board, so you can actually oversell your joist with this board. Yeah. So you're not having to land on your joist or knocking out underneath, so you get much less wastage of this particular board than you would a straight edge board. Obviously it's less time consuming because you're not having to do multiple cuts, adding noggins in to support the straight edge boards as well. So it's a much quicker install on that process. And unfortunately, it's a part of installing the GRP systems that a lot of people do tend to get wrong, which is unfortunate because if you get this part wrong and then you go through to a finished laminate, it's very hard to kind of rectify those issues. Yeah. Whereas obviously if you do happen to make a mistake during trimming or laminating, they are quite easy to rectify. So it's paramount that they get this part right, that the boards are fixed and installed correctly. Because if you do that, the laminate on top is going to last much longer, and obviously it's going to be installed nice and easy as well. And that's typically where a lot of the issues lie, is where people don't either install the correct boards or they don't install them in the correct way. Yeah. What
about expansion then for the boards once they've laid? There's some tips and tricks that you can share with our guys.
Yeah, so if I just move you around to over here, Nick. So a couple of key points then when you're installing the tongue and groove boards. Anywhere where your board is a butt in a fixed structure, you always want to leave that board away 25mm. Yep. Now this will allow for the system to expand and contract as it should do. I guess again another common thing that a lot of people refer to in traditional GRPs being quite rigid. Now a lot of the GRPs that are out there are roofing based systems, so they allow for expansion and contraction, but you are restricted on the movement of the board, so we have to restrict that so that the system's not expanding more than it should, otherwise that's where you come into getting cracks or splits, tears in the
and that gap, do you only leave that at abutments, or do you leave it at any detail where it's going to move, like around a roof light or something like that?
Yes, anywhere where there's a fixed structure, basically. So if you've got a fixed structure in your roof light, you'll need to leave that there as well, just to allow for movement. Now you're going to cover over this with a GRP edge trim anyway, so you can have a wall trim set over the side there, so you're not going to see that, and that trim will allow for the stress of the movement up there as well and allow for the expansion. What's also important with this is fixings. So fixings, when you're installing these boards, should be fixed every 200mm centres across the width of the board, achieving a minimum 40mm penetration into your joist. Again, we're restricting that movement, we're pulling everything nice and tight. If you just put in a couple of screws in here, there and everywhere, again, you're going to allow the system to expand more than it should, and that's where you're going to have issues. Another beauty of using the tongue and groove boards, when you interlock the boards, like so, the way that these boards are manufactured, print side face up is generally the procedure for these, but what you'll get is a 2mm gap in between the boards, no matter how tight you push those together. And what that will allow you to do is, as you apply the liquid over the surface of this, the resin will fall into that gap and effectively glue all of your boards together. Slightly different if you was using Flexitech. So if you was using Flexitech on this, you'd have to prime coat the joints and boards there before laying the laminate over the top. But traditional GRP is just straight over the top of that.
Why not plywood?
So it's a question that comes up a lot. So it's twofold really with plywoods. Now what we have to remember with those particular boards is it's the makeup of the board is always the same. The only variables that change in the difference between the plies is the adhesives they use, and obviously the veneers of woods. It's just stacks of wood stuck together with different adhesives to various thickness. And what happens with plywood is, one, you've got a smoother surface, so it doesn't give you a key for the material to grab hold of. But equally, when you lay the system, you're only bonding onto the first, mil or two of the first veneer or two of that plywood, and in time it could delaminate. And it falls away from the board over time, again from stress and movement and things like that. They're only straight edge boards, again most people don't leave expansion gaps, and they're uptight, so as it moves it creaks and lifts on the joints. So that's why this is a preference board. The OSB board has a rougher surface when laid in this manner as well. Keys in better, you're grabbing hold of effectively almost a full 18mm timber, creating a structural material to it as well. So it's a much better board for this system. I know guys that when they do switch over to using this, again, just through ease of install, they do save, on the time and the labour. You're using less material because you're not having to glass your joints and things like that as well. So they are a preference board over the straight edge.
I think that's probably the same with all GRP manufacturers, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know of a GRP system that would allow for recommended use on plywoods. There's some that will allow for certain gradients of plywood that's very hard to kind of come by, and usually
expensive as well.
And usually still subject to adhesion tests and things like that as well. So generally speaking, for guarantee purposes, any GRP manufacturer will recommend this board.
Always 18mm?
18mm, yeah. Again, you want that structural. So if you taking regular foot traffic on there or occasional foot traffic, it can accommodate for that.
That's fantastic. That's great. Let's just move, if we move round now, so I'm going to go behind the demonstration table. So we can talk about this is obviously going to demonstrate an overlay using Flexitech. So Tyrone's now going to just run through the priming of the surface. And one of the key things is this little contraption here, which is a deck temperature gauge, fairly cheap. I think they're about £20. Obviously, you can buy them from JJ Roofing Supplies, which is great. But I'd never heard of them. And realised how important and how different tech temperature is to air temperature. And it makes a difference because you're laying onto a colder or a hotter deck. And it's important when you add the catalyst to the primers and to the resins to get it right for the temperature that it's been laid to. So Ty's just going to go through that and just show us all about priming an overlay surface.
Yeah, thanks Steve. And as we said before at the very start, it's always the case that the contractor gets up on the roof and checks the condition of the surface first. As we said at the start as well, just because it can go over the surface doesn't mean that it necessarily always should. If there's any repairs that need to be made beforehand, those should be done in preparation. Generally just having a good walk on the roof can tell you a lot about the surface of it. If it feels quite spongy, chunks of the boards are wet, have been damaged, in which case they're probably rotten underneath. And in those cases you might have to strip back. Checking moisture condition and things like that. Again, any remedial repairs that need to be done should be done beforehand. The laminate, once it's applied over the top, is a very thin laminate. So if there's any imperfections that
it'll
on the
go
roof,
with it.
It'll go with it. So you'll see all those imperfections on there. So if you want a nice clean finish to it, you have to do the prep work beforehand.
So we're showing it as that this is a mineral felt finish overlay. But it's not just what's the word? It's just not contained to going over felt as it can go over other surfaces, can it?
So with Flexitech, we can obviously go onto new board applications. You can use it in that manner if you wish to. In terms of overlay, you've got felt is more traditional, which is why we go over that. Probably one of the more common surfaces for it. Our standard FlexiTech primer will get you over felt, asphalt, concrete, screed, brickwork. We do an SP primer for single ply systems, so if you're going over PVC, TPO, EPDM, we have a single ply primer for that, and then we also have a metal detailing primer, so if you bond into metals or lead, so it's a slightly different primer. So what we've got to remember with FlexiTech in particular, the process of installation is always exactly the same. The only two variables that change is the surface that we're bonding to, which determines the primer.
Yep.
Yeah. We have all this kind of scaled out on our website. You can download our manuals and things like that, and that'll kind of give you an overview on what primers that you should be using. But again, they can always get in touch with our technical department as well. So what we're going to do with this then is we're going to prime the surface of this using our FlexiTech primer. As you stated a moment ago, Steve, what we're going to do first is we're going to take the depth temperature, or the surface temperature I should say. So we're at 16.9 for this. Now, when you buy FlexiTech, on the tins, on the catalyst tubs, you'll get a hard no addition chart. We do have printed mixing buckets, which I'll get onto in a moment, which makes things a little bit easier. But the catalyst addition chart is printed on the catalyst tubs and on the tins of the resin, tins of the primers and things like that. So,
and although it's not identical, it would be the same sort of process with any GRP system, wouldn't it? You'd look at the temperature of depth, and then you'd work out from their chart how much catalyst you need to apply.
Absolutely. Obviously, like I said, the biggest variable change in this one is that we use a powdered catalyst.
Okay.
Most traditional GRP systems use a liquid catalyst, but the process would still be very, very similar. The only difference is you're working in millilitres rather than scoops of catalyst for it. So what we've got here is the primer ratio. Now we've only got a very, very small amount in there, but you've also got the temperature range at the top here. So we're 16.9, so we're between the 11 and 17. We've probably got about half, probably not even half a litre in there. So we'll go between that, and we'll go about 1.5 scoops.
Okay.
We'll go through the process a little bit more when we're mixing larger quantities, but just for the process of this. As I say, this is your powdered catalyst. In terms of scoops, you don't need to be too precise with this. We're not looking for kind of, some people level it out, some people do kind of heaped scoops like that. It's not going to affect the working time too much either way. So we'll drop those in.
Give it a good mix.
And then give it a mix up. Now we're using just pieces of timber on these just because we've got very small mixes in here. Generally, if you're using this on a roof, you want to use a paddle whisk on a drill or something. Just to mix that powder in correctly. So for the purposes of this, we don't need to do that. Likewise, if you're mixing the material, ideally you would mix off the roof if possible, or if you're mixing on the roof, you'd use a more mixing tray just to eliminate the risk of spilling any uncatalyzed resin.
Yeah, so that's a good point. That's a good point. Using one of them cement mixing tray things where they mix sand, cement.
That's it. So what you're looking for with this particular primer, it covers quite far, the standard primer, so the 5 kilo tin will do between 17 and 25 square metres. It does go quite far. Okay. You're probably going to get about, on average,
about 3 square metres per litre or kilo.
So what we're looking for when we're coating over this is we're not looking to lose the texture of the surface. We're just looking to lose the colour of it. So as you see, it spreads quite far. You just want a nice thin layer over the top of this.
And obviously, because it's white, it's obviously quite clear. It's quite clear when you haven't got enough down, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you put too much down? Does it make any difference?
Not really, and there may be the occasion in certain areas where you need to apply it a little bit thicker. You know, if it's dipped in, or if you need to repair any areas, you can apply some reinforcement in with the primer as well.
Is it affected? Is this product affected by rain once you put it down, or so does it need to be dry until the curing process has commenced on that? Or
yeah. So we're looking for a dry surface with this as well. Obviously, if it looks like it's going to rain, or if it starts raining, then obviously you need to stop the application.
Yeah.
So you're not applying this in the wet.
No.
Unfortunately, none of the liquid should be applied directly in wet weather. So that's all we're looking for in terms of the surface there. Like I say, we're just losing that colour, but not the texture.
How long does that normally take to dry
So
off?
as long as you stick to our guidance on the tins and the catalyst tubs, you're roughly looking about 20 to 30 minute working time with this, and what it will do is it starts to gel. And then it takes about a further 20 to 30 minutes following that point until it's fully cured. So within an hour period, you could get back up on the roof and you could walk on it.
Is there a time when you've got to lay? We're going to lay the resin now, aren't we, and consolidate it, but is there a time span when you've got to lay that next coat down?
So ideally, again, within sort of 24 to 48 hours, ideally, you don't want to be leaving it too long in between coats. If it's left longer than that, then you just want to wash coat the area with some acetone, clean it up, and then ideally, if it's left for a long period, just put another layer of primer down, another thin coat, just to allow for the bonding of the sort of laminate over the top there.
So here's one Ty produced earlier in the Blue Peter Garden, already primed with a bit of top coat.
So what we're looking for in this one then, so as I say, this is one we kind of prepared earlier, so this has already been primed on the surface and we're ready for laminating now. And when we actually laminate, we can go through some of the sort of coverage rates, spotting pinholes and things like that, with and things.
Yeah.
But again, just to promote on the mixing side of things, the Restec mixing bucket should help things a little bit more. Again, we're going to take the surface temperature, just in case it's slightly changed, so it's 17.7, so it's actually a little bit warmer on this side here than it was on that side there. So how the bucket works then, you'll see here, we've got a litre markup. We've got a little bit more in there than we actually need. So we've got 2 litres in there at the moment. So it's nice and easy to follow on the inside there. So you fill up to however many litres you need. Ideally, when you do it at first, you'd always be doing sort of detailing and bandaging and things like that. So you'd only be mixing a couple of litres at a time. When you move on to the main surface areas, again, whenever you're dealing with liquids, little and often is always best with the mixing. Not mixing too much at any one point. What you've got to remember is you're on a time limit for this. So the last thing you want to do is open up a 20 kilo tin of resin, add a load of catalyst to it, and then start trying to work the system in. That means you've only got 20 minutes to get that laid.
And I don't know whether you can see this, Nick, but obviously the numbers are on the outside and they're also on the inside. So when you're pouring the resin into the bucket, you can see it from the pouring side rather than having to look on the outside, which I think is great. I didn't notice that before, that's really good.
So what we'll do, we've got 2 litres in there. The Restec mixing buckets are calibrated for liquid catalyst use. Obviously we do a more traditional GRP, which is our GRP Roof 1010 system, so it is calibrated for liquid catalyst, but obviously we're using Flexitech, which requires a powdered catalyst with this system. So again, what you've got on the front here, we've filled up the bucket to 2 litres. We're just over 17. We'll keep it on this ratio anyway because we've got plenty of time here. So as you'll see on that mark up there, we need 6 scoops to mix in with the resin there. So it's nice and easy to follow.
Simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know we had some guys in being trained the other day who were nervous about putting in too little, or you wasn't here, was you, but putting in too little or too much liquid catalyst by using the squeezy bowls that everybody uses. And this is really simple. This is one of the things that the guys loved, because there's no mucking about. It's scoops, quite easy, as long as you get it close to the top. Give it a level scoop and in you go, which is again another benefit really.
Yeah, super simple to use. And like I say, I know that that's a big part that people are concerned about is mixing materials. But one of the beauties of, or one of the benefits of being able to mix the materials, you're in control of that. Yeah. You know, it's a controlled cure. You know, you can work within the ratio, so we tend to work on a 2 to 4% mix for the system, so you can adjust that slightly as long as you're within that range, and that can give you a little bit more time to work with the material.
That comes with experience, Tyler, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. You'll get to know it. It's very much like, someone once said to me, it's like making a cup of coffee. You don't measure out all the granules of coffee and sugars and things like that. You know how you like it.
Yeah. I might be drinking Flexitec. I'll stick with my Starbucks. Other coffees are available. And probably cheaper. Mixes in well, doesn't it? It doesn't clump or anything like that, does it?
No. Again, like I say, mixing bigger quantities, and when you're on site, ideally what you're looking for is to use a paddle whisk on the end of your drill, just to thoroughly mix it in, and it'll be the same whenever you open up the material with any liquids. You can get a bit of separation, so you want to give that a good stir before you actually decant into your buckets.
Yeah, we sell them paddle mixers now. That's not a promo, but we do sell them, and they're available online and in store, and they're proving really popular. Something that we never used to sell. Again, the guys are loving them, and that's down to training, really.
Yeah,
I think that's down to training and seeing you guys talk about using paddle mixers to make sure you get. That's about having an even mix, isn't it? Really.
yeah, that's it. And we do heavily promote those on the training days. So what we're looking for here, again, slightly different. If nobody's used, anybody watching that hasn't used Flexitec before, it's slightly different to traditional GRP in that we're putting the majority of our resin down onto the surface first.
Yeah.
So normally you put about a third with traditional GRP, then your reinforcement mat, and then 2/3 on top. So we're actually reversing the process with Flexitec. So we're applying 2/3 down onto the deck, then we'll roll out our reinforcement mat, and then we'll apply a third of resin over the top.
Apart from the measurements, is there a tip or a trick that allows you to look at that and say, yeah, I've got enough down?
Yeah,
or
so
is it purely on measurement?
So what we're looking for a little bit on this side, where I suggested earlier that we was, with the primer, that we was looking to lose the colour, not the texture.
Yeah.
With this, we're kind of looking to lose the texture. So as you can see here, we've got a nice amount of resin, whereas here we're quite dry, aren't we?
Yeah.
There's not much resin on there. You can see the texture of the felt underneath. So we want to apply a little bit more resin over the top of that surface.
Another little Tyrone tip there. Very good.
And again, what's slightly different with this, if you've never seen Flexitec in action before, is that our resin's pre-pigmented.
Yeah.
So all traditional GRP systems would require a base coat resin and then a top coat, which is your pigment.
So one product.
With Flexitec, it's just the one resin.
Yeah. Is it one resin, many
Countless possibilities. Come on, Steve, you should know that one.
One resin to rule them all. In the darkness.
So what we look for then, once we've got enough resin down, we're going to roll out our chop strand mat. And again,
What's the weight on that then?
so this is a 225 gram chop strand mat.
Okay.
So with traditional GRP systems, we use a 450 gram.
Yep.
With Flexitec, we use a 225, so it's half the thickness.
Yep.
It's kind of overcompensated with the resin, but it allows for the flexibility of the system. So what we're doing first, before we apply any more resin on top of that, we're going to use our roller just to draw that resin up through the chop strand mat there. And what this will do is it will indicate where more resin is required.
Yeah.
So hopefully Nick will pick up what you've got. You've got all these pinholes. I'll point this out a little bit more on the traditional side of things as well.
See that?
So this is something that tends to be a common issue with installing any GRP system. It's pinholes. Now, pinholing doesn't occur over time. It's something that's apparent during the actual installation process. Now, this is a combination of a couple of things. This is lack of resin or lack of consolidation, or a bit of both there.
You see the pinholes, Nick? They're quite evident, aren't they? Should never miss them, really, should you?
No, you'd like to think not, but I have been out on a few jobs that unfortunately haven't been the best. So what we get with the chop strand mat then on Flexitec, so you get this kind of crisscross pattern with it, and you can see that through there, and you can see the pinholes kind of poking through. As we start to consolidate, so we'll apply some more resin over the top, and we'll start using the roller and firm pressure down onto it, And what will happen is that matting will start to break apart, so it will start to curl up. And it'll get this nice kind of swirly pattern to it, and that's what you're looking for. So you get a nice kind of visual indicator that you've got enough resin down, you've consolidated it correctly as well. So what we'll do now, we'll start to apply some more resin over the top. As you'll see on this point here, just applying some firm pressure on there, just moving that soft roller back and forth there. You start to see where it starts to swell up.
Yep.
Top of that. Hopefully you can see that, Nick. So now you can hopefully clearly see the difference between this section here and this section here.
Yeah.
Plenty of resin down, it's been consolidated correctly, there's no pinholes anymore. Obviously they're a bit more evident on this side here. So we're just going to repeat that process again then.
You wouldn't go back over it to get rid of the pinholes, you'd use the top coat to sort that problem out then?
No, so you want to do it while you're actually installing the laminate.
Yeah.
So what you wouldn't want to do is leave those and then apply another coat over the top of it. You need that reinforcement in there, you need it broken down correctly. Hopefully, you can see it's quite obvious once you've gone through the areas correctly and where you haven't. So if you just go back and forth through there, you see that matting start to break down. Now what will happen if there's not enough resin down is it will start pulling the matting up.
All right,
okay.
okay.
So if it's too dry and there's not enough resin in it, as you start to come over it, you'll start pulling the matting up. So that's the laminate almost telling you, put some more resin down, it's too dry. So that's what we're looking for.
And these systems really, I always say when we have the training courses really, the coverage rates are key to these products, aren't they?
They are, and it will vary slightly with Flexitech, because we're going over multiple substrates with this. So it will vary, and there'll be a bit of a broader range than traditional GRP, because we're always just going on to new board and applications. Again, we have estimators for this, so they can download our estimating tool, they can put in the square meterage, they can put in the substrate they're bonding to, and it will work out the materials for them. That's something that we can offer to the contractors using the system, and also to guys like yourself that are obviously selling the product, so you can work it out for the customers as well. Now that would be then one coat. So what we do once this is once this is cured, you then apply a second coat of just the resin over the top of that surface there.
Would you prep that surface before?
So you don't need to with Flexitech, so you don't need to provide a key with this in order to create a bond. If it's been left for longer than, if it's been left overnight, I always advise to wipe the surface area clean with acetone, just to clean the surface area up before going over the top of it. But once that's done, it's just straight over the top of your resin. Obviously with catalyst again, no reinforcement over that, just the resin. That'll lose some of the fibrous pattern that you get with it as standard as well. So give you a more kind of glass finish on there.
And no consolidation.
No.
Now obviously we're going to use this when we show our traditional cover it GRP. But no consolidation roller on that at all.
No. So it's all done just with the soft application roller as you're applying it. So again, installation times can be a bit quicker with this. But as I say, that's based on the variable of the surface area is fine to coat over. Let's say it'd be one more coat of resin over the top of that. Once it's
but the laying process, if it was going over timber, if you wanted to just do one system, and that was Flexitech 2020, the laying process and the laminating process is the same,
Exactly the same, So if we're doing that over new board applications, it'd be exactly the same process. Obviously, you get a bit more optimal coverage rates on this because you're not soaking up as much of the resin.
Same weight chop strand mat?
Still a 225 gram chop strand mat as well, and it's still just the one layer of that. The only time that we get into extra reinforcement is if you're doing any details on any edges or overlaps on trims. We'll do a corner in a bit anyway, so we can show you.
Now we haven't got the demo here today, but obviously if it's terrain, this is the other Brucey bonus for these powder catalyst problems, powder catalyst systems. If that rained now, does that then ruin that surface?
No. So again, it's a combination of the formulation of the resin mixed with the powdered catalyst there that would actually resist the rain during the application. So it would actually repel that water at any surface area, and then that would just be cleaned off afterwards. So it wouldn't actually contaminate it.
Yeah. That's cool. What's that noise? Wow. Exothermic reaction, isn't it?
That's the one.
Okay, so obviously that's an overlay system from Flexitech 2020 product, which is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, we run the training courses here at Cricklewood Training Academy. We've got some freebies coming up on that, which is absolutely fantastic. That's really great. So, as we're sort of covering all forms of GRP, we're now going to look at traditional GRP. This is where it all gets messy and horribly goes wrong. So, I've agreed to be the guinea pig and just have a go at laying some of our Cover It product, which has got some additional benefits to it. Once again, one of the magic ingredients to this product is powder catalyst, with all the benefits that come with that: ease of mixing, rain resistance once applied, even mix, which gives an even cure, which is fantastic. So under Tyrone's guidance, we're going to have a bit of a go, and I think we worked out that we wanted 1.5 scoops. Is that right? 1.5 scoops?
Yeah, so we've got 1.5 scoops
into the base resin. So this is more of a traditional system with a base resin and a dark grey top coat. We put in some of the magic dust, and then we give it a good stir. Obviously, again, if you was doing this in a bigger bucket with a different area, you'd use the paddle roller, yeah?
Yeah, so you
good.
use your paddle whisk to mix that catalyst in correctly. Again, what's slightly different with this then, we used a moment ago with Flexitech, is that we've got a base coat resin and we've got a top coat in this, whereas Flexitech's just the one resin for the system there. Another variable change with this then that's slightly different to Flexitech is that they use a full 50 gram chop strand mat on the Cover It system.
So it's a bit heavier, yeah?
Yeah, a bit heavier.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, we're using far less resin as well.
Does it change colour once it's been catalysed, or does it just stay that nice?
It will start to turn, so you'll get a bit of a visual indicator for the resin in particular. You won't get it for the top coat,
No.
but for the resin part you will.
Okay.
Once you've mixed that in, Steve, just chuck it in that bucket there.
What, that one?
Yeah, that's it.
The wooden stirrer bucket, mate. Putting them together won't cause a problem, no?
Nah, it'll be fine. We'll find that.
Okay. So deck temperature then. We've sort of preempted that by putting in what we know is it's going to be. As you can see, check the old deck temperature there. 18.1. Be interesting. Yeah, it's an exothermic reaction, and yet it's not super hot, is it? So
It will start to heat a little bit more. The primer
as
will
it goes
just
off.
primer
Okay.
a bit hotter.
So we're now going to put some resin down first, yeah?
Yeah.
And what is the sort of coverage rate then? With that, you put more down first, don't you? But with this, it's not quite the same.
Yes,
is it?
it's a nice thin layer down onto the deck first.
Okay. And this basically holds the matting in place, yeah? Okay. Don't worry, guys. I won't be doing roofs at weekend, so you haven't got to worry. Is that enough?
Yeah, it's fine. Just make sure whenever you're doing this, it's obviously a little bit more difficult to see than it would be with Flexitech where it's pigmented. But what you're looking for is it looks like the board's kind of wet. So it's almost a coat over the boards there. So making sure that you're not laying the system onto any dry areas. You always want to make sure the resin applied first.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Then with the old chop strand mat. How are we doing for time then? We're all right.
40 minutes, Stephen.
Lovely. And obviously that base resin will hold it. We'll just hold it in place, and then we put
more resin over the top of this one, so
yeah.
we can put sort of 2/3 over the top of this.
Yeah. Okay, so that's quite a heavy coat then, really,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So what we're looking is to lose the colour of the chop strand mat, so it's not too white or fibrous in any areas.
Okay. Sure, I'm not on a pro.
That's it. So that sort of visual aspect there is kind of perfect. If we get that more consistent throughout, and then again, what's slightly different with traditional GRPs is that we use a metal paddle roller for this to consolidate the area. So we're achieving the same principle that we did with Flexitech in terms of breaking up that matting to lose those pinholes. But because the matting is a lot thicker, we're required to use the paddle roller to help break that down then.
Enough?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. That's perfect. As long as it's enough to make it work.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And then we want to get the old paddle roller out.
Yeah. So what you're looking for this is it will take about 4 to 5 passes of this, and what you'll see is the area will start to become transparent, and that's what you're looking for visually to let you know that there's enough resin applied and equally it's been consolidated correctly.
Yeah.
So whereas we got that visual earlier with Flexitech of the matting kind of swirling up, with this we're looking for that transparency, and if it doesn't start to turn transparent, then again that's the laminate telling us that there's not enough resin down and it hasn't been consolidated enough.
Can you over paddle roll it?
No, you can't. So what
Do you have to do it in one direction, or
you
does it
can
just...
change direction. It's a little bit easier on here that we can kind of change direction. If you're on a roofing application, the chop strand mat is metre wide rolls, so you're using your rollers on extension poles, just kind of laying over the surface there. So you will typically be moving in one direction on a main roof area, but obviously on here we're privileged that we can move it around.
Yeah. It's not out on the roof, is it? It's not windy. It's not threatening with rain.
That's it. We appreciate the controlled environment in here. But
Is that all right? A bit more, or...?
perfect. That's it. So that's the laminate complete there, and again the same with this stage here.
Yeah. Does that need to go in? We got some...
There's some acetone just down there. Chuck it in there for us. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, you need to be careful of that, because otherwise the resin, they freeze the rollers up, don't they? I know we had it the other day, we had some rollers that hadn't been put properly in the acetone, and there was a bit of a devil's own job to free them and get them to be used again. So
Yeah, so if you're cleaning any, obviously the roller sleeves are no good once you've actually applied the laminate or the top coat. Most of the rollers you can change the sleeves, you can slide off, or there's a screw end on there that you can unscrew. Change the sleeves for them. You can keep the frames as well, so you can clean those with the acetone. The metal paddle rollers, if you're using a more traditional system, can be cleaned with the acetone as well. So if you are cleaning the tools, keep a little tub of acetone up on the roof with you, but keep a lid over it as well. Because the last thing you want is the acetone evaporating.
So we worked this out beforehand that 1 scoop would be enough on the top coat. That was the right time, wasn't it?
So give that a stir. And again, I know we've said it a few times now, but you'd be using a paddle whisker if you're on site.
Yeah.
Mixing that material in correctly.
And obviously using that paddle whisk will prevent any clumping and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Is that on a slower speed, or I would imagine if you had it going too quick, it'd be...
Yeah, you'd be wearing off of it.
Yeah. You need to be careful. Obviously, these are chemicals. Obviously, I'm wearing gloves. I've got my Specsavers glasses on. But you know, eye protection and stuff like that. If that's what you need to do, that's really great. After all, they are chemicals, aren't they? So
They are, yeah. So
you
want
need to take
want to be
care.
careful with them.
Do we need to sand or acetone this before we go again?
So what you're looking for again with the sanding requirement, we've covered it. It's a bit more on the appearance base of the surface. If there's any imperfections on any of the details, we want to sand those down to tidy those up. We don't necessarily need it to provide a key for this particular system. Most other GRPs, yes, you need to sand the entire surface area first to provide a key for it. Wipe it clean with acetone. That will alleviate any of the dust or dirt or debris that's sat on the roof as well, and then we can obviously apply our top coat over the surface.
What about cross use of products? Is that a recommended thing, or is that something you should try and keep away from?
Yeah, I would always tell installers to avoid using variations of systems or cross, as you say, cross-contaminating them. The trouble is when you start mixing materials, you're voiding guarantees from both manufacturers, and that's obviously an issue. So if there was a problem down the line, no manufacturer is going to be held responsible, because the systems together, two alternative systems, aren't tried and tested to work together. Everything about FlexiTech with the primers has been tried and tested, that it all works together with our trims and our primers and our resins and things like that, and it'll be the same with this system here. And any other GRP system that's for roofing applications is designed to work together. So yeah, I'd never promote using variations of different systems.
It's good to be together, as an advert, right? So what sort of coverage rate are we looking for?
So we can apply it a little bit thicker on this, so the top coat's a little bit more forgiving than some other systems.
Can you put too much down?
Yeah, again, I still never promote putting it too heavy, because if it's applied too thick, you can potentially get cracking, fractures in it. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be leaks, because it's just a superficial marking on the actual top coat itself. The one, the laminate's okay, but obviously from an installer's point of view, if the customer starts, or the homeowner starts to see cracking and splitting on the roof, naturally you're going to panic. So you may assume that there's going to be leaks on there.
Is that enough, or do I need a bit more?
I'll apply a little bit more.
A bit more, right? So obviously we've used the powder catalyst. So I take it that if it was to rain now, I know we've done it before, we've shown it before, but obviously once this is down, because of the powder catalyst and because of the resins that we're using, obviously it doesn't affect the curing process, does it?
Yeah, so it won't contaminate the area. The water will sit on the surface of it, and then once it's obviously fully cured, it will still cure within the given time frame. So we're still looking at that 20 to 30 minute working time, or sort of an 45 to an hour period before it's fully cured. And once it's fully cured, then we can just wipe the surface area.
Is that right?
Perfect.
Thumbs up from Ty. funny I was 48. So that's great. So that's fantastic. Thanks for that. That's some fantastic pointers, some little tips for our viewers, which is what we do, Never Just a Roof, just to get them little extra tips that make your job easier on the day. And just finally, before we start thinking about signing off, let's have a look at some detail work, Ty.
Yep, no problem. It's something or a question that's usually asked. You see a lot of display samples with these kind of nice pre-finished kind of corners on them. Obviously, you can't buy you can buy a C1 external corner, but it's kind of a block end to it. So some people like to finish off their corners like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to pre-form one ourselves.
And is that using the same chop strand mats that you would?
Yeah, so what we've got, so we're going to be using FlexiTech on this, obviously. We're using the 225 gram chop strand mat. So if you're using FlexiTech with the 225 matting, anywhere we're using it on any details or any overlaps of trims, we're applying 2 layers of matting. Okay. The reason for this is we want additional reinforcement on those edges. And if we apply it on a 450 gram, because we're on a vertical on these edges, it's too hard to kind of dress that material through. So we apply one piece over the top and then another piece over the top.
You talk about finishing tissue as well.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, I'll highlight, I guess, some of the main difference between using it and not using it. Now, you don't need to use finishing tissue. It's merely an appearance-based product. But I'll use it on here, and then hopefully everyone can see the benefits of using that system.
And all my branches can make sure they've got finishing tissue in stock. So I think it's a real good addition.
It is, yeah. I'll be honest, it's something, again, because we use it on the training sessions, so So we show guys how to finish off external corners like this, and they use the finishing tissue. And it's very rare that they don't then go on and buy the finishing tissue on the back of that. Now, regardless of what detail you're doing on site, what I'd always recommend is just keeping an off-cut piece of board, which is used as a spot board for wetting your details out onto.
Yeah.
The last thing we want to do is start wetting out onto the main surface area, because you're going to have patches all over the roof, and it's going to start to get messy. That's usually where guys tend to tread in it and walk it all over the roof. So what we want, little spot board, any off-cut piece of board.
And like all traditional roofing, you do all the detail work first, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we go through and we do all these detail edges first. So what we're doing here is we're just applying some resin on top of that mat. Recommend with Flexitech just flipping that over and just chucking a piece on the other side as well.
If you did that with cover it,
Yeah.
you'd use the base coat resin.
Base coat resin,
Yeah.
it'd be just the one layer of 450 gram mat as well.
Yeah.
So you won't need 2 layers on that.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for with this, try not to have too much resin on your roller when you're dressing your corner details. Now we're just looking to get it roughly into place for now. We're not going to go too mad at this point, because we still need to apply another piece over the top there. You can just use your roller just to dress it round into place here. And you'll see the beauty with liquids is that it's so easy to kind of mould into these kind of tricky detail areas as well. So what we're going to do is just repeat that process again. So wet out onto your spot board first, and then, like you say, Steve, it'd be the same process for any detail area using this system as well. But we just want that additional reinforcement on the corners here. And all I suggest for these things, don't worry if it's hanging over a little bit too much, because once it's fully cured, we can trim that up.
Trim it off with a knife.
Tidy it up. The main thing is just getting that profile into place. Again, just use your roller just to stretch that round.
You show this on training courses, don't you?
Yeah, so they'll get to, if anyone attends a training course, they'll pre-form 2 external corners like this.
Yeah.
Now what you'll see, and this would be the same with your traditional GRP, so if we're using cover it on this corner here, what you'll see is it's quite fibrous, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you get that fibrous pattern to it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but people generally want that nice smooth kind of finish, especially on the front edges and things like that.
Yeah, that's where it's seen. That's one of the first things that,
Yeah.
that gets you right, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely. So what we use on here is a tissue material. So this is fiberglass. It's a very, very fine grade. Now, it's not structural. It's just decorative purposes only.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we do with this is
That comes on a roll, does it? You buy
it
that
does,
on a roll?
yeah. So we do it on I think it's a 100-metre roll. So it lasts a while, but it's not overly costly. So what we do with this, just using your roller, you don't need too much resin on there. We just start to come over the top of that surface. Just using that roller just to dress it down into place.
It's like cobwebs, isn't it?
Yeah. If it starts to pull up a bit too much, just get a little dab of resin. What you'll start to see is that just blend in nicely now, so you lose that fibrous pattern that you'd normally get with it, so you get that kind of nice smooth finish that saves on all your sanding time later on. Like I say, you can leave it as that fibrous pattern.
Yeah.
You can kind of try and sand it to blend it in a little bit more, but typically the tissue material is the easiest option there for you. And you can use that on all your detail edges as well. It doesn't just have to be your front edge here. If you've got an internal corner, a butt in a wall, something like that, you can use a piece on there. If you're forming around a pipe detail, you can obviously use it there as well.
So the 225, use 225 matting on Flexitech.
Yeah.
Are there any positions that you want to use 2 layers of 225?
Just anywhere where you're meeting a corner, overlaps of trims,
Yeah.
and then in detail areas. If you're using the 225, you need to double up. So you use 2 layers of it.
But on a flat area, would the
Flat area, you wouldn't need it. We'd use the 1 layer of bandage material to seal our trims to our deck, but we're applying another layer over the top of that anyway, so it's effectively reinforcing that edge there. Doesn't need to be on the main surface area because we can apply the resin a lot thicker. We've got the structural material below us as well. Obviously, in the case of an overlay, we've got the surface that's there previous. We've got the primers as well, so they kind of overcompensate for what's
if you
there.
used it, I know we're going to talk very briefly because we are running out of time on the additional products that we've got. One of them is the balcony system, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you can. One of them's the balcony system, and one's the carrier membrane, which is that's a relatively new addition to the system, isn't it? But just talk to us about the balcony systems, because I'm really excited about them. I've seen other manufacturers that have come up with a balcony system, and they look ever so good.
Yeah.
We've now got this as part of the Restec Flexitech system. Just talk to us briefly about that if you can.
Yeah, so what it is then, it's a quartz sand, so it comes in variations of colours. It's a quartz sand and it's finished off with a clear PMMA resin. That's in basic principle of how the makeup is. In terms of actual installation process, then you'd apply your secondary coat onto this. If you can imagine this was going to be our balcony area. You then apply a 3rd coat of resin, which would kind of be classed as your sacrificial layer, which is just to bond in the quartz sand. So you'd apply your 3rd coat while it's still wet. You'd sprinkle on your quartz sand over the area. Once that's cured, you'd then sweep off the excess back into your bucket or bag for future use. And then we do the clear balcony sealer, which is PMMA resin. That requires a powdered catalyst to cure as well.
Is that the same powder catalyst or is it different?
Same powder catalyst, so same powder catalyst that we use for the resins and the primers. And then that's just coated over the surface. What that will help with is the quartz wearing away over time. Stop any moss growing in there as well.
Well, that's great. Well, we stock this. We don't stock all the colours of quartz sand because everybody will have their own favourite colour, but we definitely stock the PMMA. I know Lee's got it over at our Osworth branch, PMMA sealer, so we can get the quartz sand in super quick, which is great, as you saw from Nick's close-up of the balcony system brochure. It's got loads of different colours. Just very, very, very quickly, because we really are running out of time, talk to us about the carrier layer.
So this is what we class as a sacrificial layer then, effectively. So it's a 2mm membrane with self-adhesive backing to it. This is stuck down. We use an SA primer, which is air cured. SA primer down first, you tear off the backing here, that'd be stuck down on the primer. Now where this would be used, twofold. One, if we were concerned about bonding requirements, or if you wanted a complete new surface to bond to, so say there's concrete substrate that you're working to and it's cracked and crumbling, you don't want to do the remedial works, you could apply this down onto the surface first to give you a nice clean surface to work to. In addition to that, it's also used over the top of insulation boards. So if you're using tissue face insulation, rather than decking over the top, you can fit the entire system without any mechanical fixings as well, because we do various adhesives that bond the insulation down, the VCLs and things like that. This is then just stuck down over the top of the tissue face, and then Flexitech straight over the top, and you don't need any primers over the top of that as well. So that's it in brief.
That's fantastic, and again, along with these, we've pushed the boat out, and we keep this in stock as well with the SA primer, and it's proving really, really popular and really positive addition to what we do. Right, I'm being told, I'm being given that cut from Mr. Spielberger over there. it has been a long thing. It's been a long episode of Never Just a Roof. There's been some fantastic tips and tricks, as there always is. You know, please try and get along to one of the FlexiTech 2020 training courses, because the training courses are full of fantastic tips and tricks. As today, short snapshot. We've got some giveaways to give away today. We've got some thermometers. Should have had this really ready. Some thermometers and some mixing buckets. We'll choose them people at random. We've got 6. We've also got 6 spaces available on the 2020 training course. And if you want to be a bit more traditional and you want to cover it, advanced GRP waterproofing, we're also going to divvy up some training spaces for that on a course, any course. We have them every month here at Cricklewood, at our training academy. We provide lunch. It's a fantastic day. The trainers are brilliant. I'd like to just thank Ty for spending his time, and obviously for Restec for supporting us, as they always do. Thanks for your time.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me, and hopefully everybody enjoyed that and
yeah,
got a few benefits.
So much really. We needed to have an episode like Netflix, 6-week episodes released once every week, which is great. So fantastic. Don't forget the giveaways. Look out for Nick to get in contact with the lucky recipients of our giveaways. Don't forget, follow #NeverJustARoof, and you'll get notified of the next episode. We've got one in November. We're keeping it a bit secret because I'm really excited and really looking forward to what we're going to do on that day. So thanks for your time. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like Never Just a Roof. You can get everything via our JJ Roofing Supplies Instagram account. We've also got Roofing Trading Academy account on there as well to keep an eye on what I'm doing with the training courses. Nick's trying to kill me because he wants me to finish, but I've got so much to say, and you know that. I've got too much to say and there's not enough time. So I hope you've enjoyed today's little session. It could have been 3 hours long and we still wouldn't have covered everything. Once again, thanks to Ty. Thanks for all your help and support as ever. Thanks for Nick. Fantastic work behind the lens. And we'll see you guys next month on episode 4 of Never Just a Roof. And don't forget, at JJ Roofing Supplies, if it's on the roof, we stock it.